Hi guys, welcome back to Mr. Scott's Tales and Stories. I hope you've been enjoying some of these stories and some of our guests that have come in and done some reading for us. We're having a good time doing it, and I thought I would add another story to our collection while I've got a break going on here, and just touching base with you guys, making sure that we're washing our hands, we're keeping some distance between us and other people, we're doing what our moms and dads and grandmothers and granddaddies and uncles and aunts are telling us to do, trying to listen to them and make sure we all stay safe and healthy so we can all get back to school soon. The governor has closed school for the rest of the year, but that doesn't mean we're missing out on anything. We're going to keep doing our work that we're getting at home. And I'll be around, and some of the other teachers will be around to see you guys and give you some more work and help you all out as best as they can, okay? So don't miss out on your Zoom meetings, and don't forget to do your reading. Speaking of reading, I got a good story here. This is a Jack Tales. You remember Jack? Jack's a really interesting fella, and he is one fantastic shot with a rifle and just an excellent hunter. And there's a couple of good stories out there about Jack and his hunting abilities and prowess. And I think you're going to like this. This one's kind of cool. This is called Jack's Hunting Trips. Okay? Now, back in the old days, there were plenty of good game back on these mountains here. And one time Jack started out real early in the morning on one of his hunting trips. Took his daddy's old flintlock rifle down over the over the fireplace. Got the powder horn and some bullets and pulled out up the river. He traveled on through the woods the right smart ways and didn't see nothing much for a considerable long while, till first thing he knowed, he looked up ahead of him and he saw a deer standing under a big oak tree. Biggest deer Jack had ever seen. And right over that deer was a whole flock of wild turkeys just a-sitting on the limb waiting for the deer to leave so they could come on down. They was a-sitting up right close together in a row, and the limb was pointing right at Jack's way. Jack didn't know what to do. He wanted that deer, but he wanted them turkeys too. You ever been in a situation like that where you got two things and you want both of them, but you think you can only have one of them? Well, let's see how Jack solved this problem. Jack didn't know what to do. He wanted that deer, but he wanted them turkeys too. So he got out his knife and cut the ramrod in two. Put one bullet on top of the powder, then he put that half a ram in the gun and put another bullet at the top of it. He drawed down on the deer, and when he pulled the trigger, he jerked up on the gun so's the bottom bullet would go down that row of turkeys. Allowed maybe he'd get 5 or 6 of them at one shot. Well, he got that deer all right. But that other bullet struck the limb them turkeys were sitting on, and it split it open. And when the split clammed back together, it clamped over the turkey's middle toes on every one of them. And then every one of them turkeys just knelt and held, and it there couldn't fly away. The split limb held them tight. Jack saw them a-squawking and a-flopping and knew he had them caught. So he went on over to look at his deer first. It was a full-grown buck. Had horns on him that reached about 6 foot from one end to the other. That's a big deer. Jack started to walk around him, and he saw something kicking in the brush. Looked up and found him a big fat rabbit was sitting over there. That bullet had gone plumb through the deer and killed the rabbit sitting in the weeds. Now ain't that something? Then Jack saw where the bullet had glanced into a holler tree. There was something sticky oozing out of the hole. Jack stuck his finger in it and tasted it. Kind of a yeller looking substance, and it was sourwood honey. Oh, sourwood honey is so good. That holler tree was packed full of wild bees right up to the top. Well, Jack looked up at all them turkeys a-fluttering and a-clucking and allowed he'd cut the limb off and take 'em home alive. So he scaled up the tree and commenced a-cutting on that limb. When it came loose, he grabbed hold of it, but when he'd done that, them turkeys all set to flying and carried Jack off a-hanging to the tree limb. Jack was mighty near scared to death. I would be too. He didn't know whether he could hold on till they stopped somewhere. Well, they kept right on up over the tops of the trees and over the mountain, and finally Jack saw they were headed to fly right over an old stumpy tree standing over on the next ridge. So Jack said it didn't differ whether they stopped or no. He was going to try to drop off that and light on that old stumpy tree. So when they got right over it, Jack let go of the limb. But when he dropped, instead of lighting on the top of that tree, it was a holler tree, is what it says. A hollow tree. And Jack hit it right in the mouth of that big old open holler and went clean to the bottom. When he got up and quit squirming around, Jack felt something come out from one of the side hollers and rubbed up against his leg. Then two more came out and started grunting and rubbing and strumming all over his feet. Jack's eyes finally got used to how dark it was down there, and that's when he realized and saw that it was 3 young bears. Bears. Oh, have you seen the bears that have been out lately? They're all over the place. "Bedad," says Jack. You know, he says that a lot. "The old bear'll be coming down here directly and she'll eat me for sure." Messing with his babies or her babies like that. Ain't nothing worse than a mama bear. He couldn't figure no way in the world to get out of there, so he had to study him some plan to try and defend himself. He had lost his knife when he grabbed hold of that limb, and he searched every pocket he had, and all he could find was an old table fork with only one prong in it. Now, why he was carrying that, I don't know, but it turns out it was a pretty good thing. Well, Jack knowed that old bear would have to come down that holler tree towards him backwards. So he decided what he'd do, he'd just wait and started petting them baby bear cubs a little bit. Then directly, something cut the light out up above him from the top of that hollow log. And all of a sudden it was black and dark like, and Jack heard that old mama bear a-scrounging down that hollow log down towards him, that hollow tree. He jumped up and reached up one hand over his head just as high as he could, and when that old bear got down close enough, Jack seized hold of her tail and commenced to gouging her with that old table fork right in the rear end. That old bear went to scrambling back, and out the holler, and Jack he hung on tight, swung onto that tail, and kept going after her. And when they got out the top, Jack gave her a right quick shove, and that old bear fell to the ground and broke her neck. It's too bad about that. Jack sat there on top of the tree a while and studied what he'd do next. Finally, he allowed he'd go home and get the team to tote in his bear and his deer so he could get them all skinned out. Well, he come on down and headed out for home, got to the river, and he saw a bunch of wild ducks swimming on the near side of a bend where it was pretty deep. Jack just had to have those ducks. Jack's got to have everything. Have you noticed that? And he had to figure out, and he couldn't figure out just how he would in the world he would go get them without no gun or nothing. He studied about it a little bit, thinking a while. Then he tied the bottoms of his overalls so he could swim a little better, make it a little bit easier to swim. He cropped up and slipped on into the river. He cropped up and slipped into the river. Kept on easing in till he was plumb underwater. Pretty neat. Then he went to swimming. Round under there, he pulled out a long piece of string he had in his overall pocket. And right easy like, he set, so as not to scare him none, he tied all them ducks' feet together from underwater. And he didn't aim to take and fly off like he did with them turkeys. So he dove on down to the bottom and tied the rope to a big old sycamore root that came out into the river. Then he popped up out of the water right in amongst all them ducks, and they started quacking and flopping and tried to rise off up the water and fly away. The rope held them back and jerked them back, and directly they were all tangled up and in one big old bundle. Jack started wading out, and when he got out along the bank, his pant legs felt awful heavy. And that's when he noticed something kicking around inside of him. Remember, he tied up his pants legs? He had been down there underwater so long, a bunch of fish had done got tangled up in his baggy overalls. Ain't that something? So Jack untied his legs and kicked around till he had shook all them fish out. And it ended up being about 30 pounds of fish. Do you believe that? Why, goodness. Jack slung his fish across his shoulder and picked up that parcel of ducks and went on. And he kept looking for them turkeys, but he reckoned they'd just flown clean out of the country by that time. Now, when Jack did get home, Will and Tom didn't believe Jack had done all that. Yeah, I'd be hard-pressed to believe it, too. They hitched up the team to a big old sled and took 2 big barrels to fetch the honey. They got that deer loaded onto it, and Jack picked up his rabbit, throwed it on the sled with up next to the deer. Then they cut the bee tree down, and after they had filled both barrels, that holler log was still full about halfway with honey, good old yellow sourwood honey. Then they hauled out that back to home after they put the log up on top of the sled and put out after the bear next. After they unloaded that stuff at the house, they headed out and got that big old mama bear. It weighed more than the deer did, and put out. But they finally got it loaded on. Then Will and Tom cut a hole in the bear's holler, and Jack caught them youngin' bears, and they made some rope halters and tied the young bears behind the sled. When they got out to the road again and had gone along a ways, they heard some wild turkeys a-squawking, and they looked up, and there was Jack's flock still fastened on that limb and head all tangled up on some bramble briars where they had tried to lie down in the brush. Jack got him a long pole and whacked them all in the head to stun them a little bit so they wouldn't try to fly off no more. Then he knocked that limb loose and flung the turkeys on top of the bear. They skinned out the deer and the bear and cured all the meat. Jack made him a couple of pens for his ducks and his turkeys, and his mother canned up all them fishes. And Jack and his folks had bear meat, deer meat, turkey meat, duck meat, fish meat, all to last them a long, smart while. Jack tamed up them young bear cubs and carried them down to the king's house. The king and his folks took so over them young bears, they paid Jack $1,000 apiece for them. Now, that's some mighty expensive bears. They went back and got the rest of that honey, too. I forgot how long it took Jack to eat that honey. Now, that's the first story in Jack's Hunting Tales. Now, do you think he was making some of that up? Good gracious, what happened? Watch this. Automatic lights, pretty cool, huh? But, do you think Jack made a lot of that story up? Yeah, I've heard kind of the same stories from other hunters and fishermen before. And there's nothing better than a tall tale hunting story or a tall tale fishing story. I bet your granddaddies probably have a couple of them. All you got to do is ask them, and or some of the other grown-ups, and they can tell you some pretty wild tales about the 2-headed fish in the French Broad River. Oh, that's a good story. Then there's the time the old man from Hot Springs went up on the mountain looking for bear. Didn't find no bear, but they did find a dragon. Oh, good gracious, that's a good story. Maybe we'll talk about those stories next time we come back. In the meantime, this is what I want you to do. Behave yourself, do your schoolwork, get in touch with your teachers, talk to them, let them know that you're doing well because they care about you. Listen to the grown-ups. Keep washing our hands, keep our distance from people. If you got a mask and you want to wear a mask, that's perfectly fine. You can go outside with that on or talk to other people while you're wearing it. The important thing is to be healthy. So when we come back to school, we're going to be healthy and have a good time. I'm really looking forward to getting back to school with you guys. All right. In the meantime, you guys stay safe and stay healthy. And come on back and we'll have some more stories later. All right. Bye, y'all.